Starvation. When convicts like John Hudson and Elizabeth Hayward were rowed to the shore at Sydney Cove, standing on dry land for the first time in about a year, they were met by dense or thick bush and confusion. Everywhere they looked, they would have seen men pitching tents, clearing patches of land, or trying to find covered storage for the food supplies. What they didn't find was a prison cell because there was no structures of any kind in the colony. In fact, it would be many years before John and Elizabeth, like most of the convicts, slept in real beds again, or sat in a chair, or even took shelter under a solid roof. And some convicts would have only the hollow of a tree for their home. Governor Arthur Phillip hoped the settlement would gradually be able to grow its own fresh food, but nothing went to plan. The hard woods of the Australian bush broke many of the convicts' tools. This meant they struggled to clear the land and to cut wood for new buildings. On top of this, there were too few convicts with building or farming skills, and many were too weak to work after the long voyage from England. This was a big problem because the colony relied on the convict labour for its survival, especially when the Marines refused to work the land and said their sole job was to protect the colony from invasion. Then all of the crops died. The soil was poor and rocky, the weather baking hot, and the young plants under constant attack from insects and mice. Month after month after month, the convicts as well as the Marines were forced to survive on the last scraps of rotting food they'd brought with them from England. They even ran out of clothing and shoes as well as items like candles. 2 years after their arrival, many died of hunger. Could this struggling colony survive? To find out, Phillip gave an emancipus farmer, meaning a freed farmer or one who was given a pardon from his sentence, so he was freed by Arthur Phillip, named James Roos, a hectare of land near Parramatta, west of Sydney. Roos worked hard on his farm and grew enough food to support his children and his wife, Elizabeth Perry, who had also been transported as a convict on the First Fleet. Roos was one of the first to prove that agriculture did have a future in this strange land. Following his example, other farmers were set up to the west of Sydney. Roos was also the first to show that hard-working convicts could find a new beginning in New South Wales. In June 1790, a second fleet of more than 900 convicts arrived in New South Wales, and then a third the following year. The British government sent a message to Phillip to say they would start sending convicts to the colony twice a year. At least this meant the settlement was guaranteed a regular supply of fresh goods, finally lifting the threat of starvation.